Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Optics in Action, where we spotlight leaders with vision and clarity. And today I'm really excited. This is kind of a unique one. We've got Andy Pace. He is the founder of the Green Design Center. He's an architectural design consultant and a healthy home expert. And so we're going to find out a little bit about what all of those things mean as we get into the conversation today. So welcome, Andy. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, Ryan. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you all.
Awesome. So the first question I always like to ask guests is why? So you've got three things there, but why is this so important to you? What sort of led you down this path to get you passionate about green design and healthy homes and architectural design consulting? Why do you do this?
That's a great question, Ryan. I started in the construction industry back in 1989. I actually, right out of school, I started working with my family in their business. They had a business that dates back to the 1930s in commercial construction material supply. And it was my job to work with architects, engineers, contractors to make sure that materials were specified correctly and then ultimately installed correctly to meet our customers' requirements. In 1992, so 3 years into this industry, into my career, I was working on a project in downtown Milwaukee. We were supplying a water-based epoxy coating for a below-grade parking structure. So this is supposed to be a waterproofing, a protection coating for the concrete. The material we got specified was a water-based product. So we all thought water-based meant safe, the safest thing available. So we used to get started, our crews get started. After the primer coat was installed, people started calling, the people living in the condos above started calling and complaining about the aromas. Well, one of those phone calls happened to be from a sitting United States Senator's office in that building. And now we're really starting to take notice. And what really hit us hard was 3 of our own workers were rushed to the hospital because of inhalation complications. They literally could not breathe because of the coatings and the chemical emissions and off-gassing from those coatings. We learned early on that water-based didn't mean safe. Water-based actually meant most of the liquid in the product is water, the rest is solvent. And that actually, it hit us hard because here we're talking about our crews, our friends, getting sick, getting violently sick from these coatings. And we stopped the job and we decided to look for materials that were healthier for the occupants, healthier for the users. And once we started learning about this, Ryan, we just thought, if these products are available, why aren't we all using them? You know, why is the industry still stuck on using all these old solvent-based products? Why can't we use these healthier finishes? And so we started a brand new company called the Green Design Center, and we focused on human-friendly and environmentally friendly building materials. And we really focused on the health of the occupant, health of the human occupant first. And that's how we operate our business today.
Got it. It's a great story. I mean, not a great story in the sense that people were complaining, people were hurt and things like that. But I think that you walked through this, you walked into an experience that enabled you to think about the world in a different way. And one of our core values at my company is we fail, we acknowledge it, and we adapt, right? So
Right.
We know that there are going to be failures in our business, in our lives. Hiding them doesn't really help. Acknowledging them and figuring out how to learn and adapt is really what it's all about to me. So I love that you share that story from that perspective of you had a situation. It was obviously a bad situation, but you acknowledged it and you learned from it, and you actually have created an organization out of it to solve that exact problem, or even a bigger problem, but that was just a piece of it, it sounds like. Is that right?
Well, we didn't know how big the problem was until we really started digging into it. But, you know, to your point, no business sets out trying to fail.
That's right.
Businesses set out trying to obviously succeed, but the good ones, the ones that last long, are the ones that find those failures and say, now how do we build upon that? How do we fix things? And we use it as a learning opportunity. And so that's why we've been around as long as we have. You know, when we first started the business, we thought, let's start selling the products to contractors and to building owners, right? I was from the commercial industry. And so I thought, I'm going to sell it to hospitals and nursing homes, you know, places where you'd think they need non-toxic paints and coatings. And that was an ultimate failure too, that I learned from, because I learned early on that they really didn't care about the health of their occupants. They cared about the bottom line. And that's a whole separate conversation, of course. But ultimately, what happened was doctors and nurses would come up to me after I would do presentations to the admin staffs and the painting contractors that work for the hospitals, and they'd say, "Yeah, we're never going to use this stuff here because all they care about is the bottom line. But where can I buy this for my house? We need to
Wow.
repaint our house. I would love to be able to use something that's completely non-toxic. Where do I get this stuff?" I knew nothing about retail, absolutely nothing. I was commercial
Yeah.
construction, I was industrial work. I knew nothing about working with homeowners and tinting paint and all that stuff. But all of a sudden, it was like this light bulb. We have got to get the product into the hands of people who really do want it, and that's the homeowner. So we shifted our focus that was 100% commercial to Green Design Center, which is about 99% residential direct, and now it's starting to shift a little bit where contractors and building owners are starting to work with us. But really, it was all about the individuals, the homeowners, who they're the ones who are spending the money, and they're the ones who wanted to make sure that those dollars were spent in a healthier way.
Yeah. Well, I often like to talk about the intersection of people and process. And I think what you just described there is looking at people and people's motivations. And, it's not to say that all hospitals are bad or they don't care, they only care about money or whatever, but you saw a problem, you started down this path to fix it,
Mhm.
and you shifted then. You took that feedback from the people
Right.
who or your original audience wasn't who actually started really buying it and really started driving it. And I think that's a really important insight that you had to shift some of your processes. I'm sure that your original processes were not set up for going direct to consumer. You were
No.
thinking, we're going to go and do this. These are the people, this is our target market. Then when you found out your audience was really a different audience, you had to shift your processes to enable you to take that hard left turn. How did that work out for you? Or how did you do that?
It was a struggle at the start, I'll be honest with you. Again, I'm used to working with architects. I'm used to working with general contractors for large developments, and where everything's more of a negotiation and you're meeting a set of plans and specifications for the project. Working with a homeowner, it's vastly different. It's somebody calling up and saying, "Oh my gosh, we're remodeling the bathroom, and we just realized that we need a primer for the new drywall. Do you have one available?" And so it's completely different. It's a different vernacular. It is a completely different process on going to market, on closing the sale, so to speak.
Mhm.
So it made us figure out the retail end of things, but I still utilized that experience that I had from commercial construction on working with our clients. One of the reasons why our company has been so successful over the years is that when somebody calls up, they can actually book a consulting appointment with me to help walk them through a construction project, because I've done it. I've been in that industry for
Yeah.
a very long time. I know how homes get put together, and I can help them and their contractors and speak that language about that communication and learning from that communication. In my career, I have worked with over 30,000 individuals,
Wow.
30,000 different customers who have all sorts of health issues related to building materials or mold or different types of autoimmune diseases, Lyme disease, chronic inflammatory response. And but everybody shares the same desire, which is, I need to live in the healthiest home possible, because these unhealthy chemical emissions can trigger severe reactions. With all of those customers, I have learned something from every one of them. And matter of fact, many of the products that we sell today, many of the products that we started manufacturing, are a direct result of a conversation that started with one of the customers saying, "I wish somebody made this."
Hmm.
And it got us thinking, like, I obviously I come from the industry where consumers, they're having to deal with this on a daily basis inside their own
Mhm.
homes. They know what they need. They may not be able to correctly describe it,
Right.
but given the right information and ask the right questions, maybe we can develop something. And so many of our products over the years have been developed because of that feedback from customers.
That's fantastic. So you're doing some manufacturing, you've got the sales process direct to consumers. It sounds
Yes.
like you don't go through retail channels or something. It's mostly direct to consumers.
Yes, we do have a couple of retail partners we work with for some of our products, but I would say the vast majority of our sales are direct to consumer. We will work with contractors. We will work in partnership with the consumer and their contractor. Just
Mhm.
depends on how the project is working.
Got it. So what does your process look like in terms of you've got a unique product, a unique route to market here. So in terms of creating awareness about your product,
Mhm.
secondly, handling those direct to consumer transactions, is that, I don't know if you're shipping direct or
Oh
like,
yeah.
like all these things. So client awareness, manufacturing, shipping, all of those things. How have you evolved those processes over the past, years as you've been evolving this?
Yeah, well, when I first started the company, we had the old-fashioned printed catalog that we'd mail out, you know? And so it's like that company was called, I think, Oriental Trading Company. They had a catalog full of 1,000 things, and nothing was really related to each other. But, for us, everything was related into
Mm,
personal care items, cleaning materials, air purification, water purification, things that would make the home and the occupants healthier. That was really our focus from the start. While we did dabble in a number of items that would also be considered environmentally friendly, our focus was the human aspect. Now, on that, that's another way that we would help communicate and guide the customer. If a customer called up, and let's say in one of we have couple of showrooms, and somebody walks into one of the showroom and says, I have three main types of customers that walk in. The first one walks in and says, we are building a new home. We have a 7-year-old with autism. And as you know, autistic children don't do well around chemical off-gassing. So we want to make sure that everything we use in the home, floor materials, countertops, cabinetry, paint, is completely free of chemical off-gassing. Can you help us? Now
right.
that's our bread and butter. That is exactly what we work with. Second customer walks in and says, I've been on this earth for 55 years. I've been a burden to the earth for 55 years. I want to remodel a home using nothing but recycled, repurposed, renewed materials. I want to go down to the Habitat Restore and purchase doors and windows, and I don't want anything manufactured specifically as new for my project. Can you help me? Okay. It's a different set of circumstances, but I can do it. The third
Yeah.
customer walks in and says, I want to build a home with the lowest carbon footprint. Wow. Okay. Three completely separate customers, completely separate ideas. But in the grand scheme of things, all of that's considered green.
Right.
None of them are wrong.
Yeah.
They're all right in their own way. Every other company that's out there, home improvement companies, you name it, building material supply companies, they all focus on green from an environmental standpoint, but they don't assess the customers. They only assess what they're supposed to from regulatory reasons.
Mhm.
I look at every customer as being an individual. They have their own set of circumstances, what we call their own personal degree of green. It just so happens we focus on human health ourselves. We think that's the most important. But if somebody needs one of those other two things, we can take care of that
Yeah.
as well. And so that's how we've evolved over the years. That's how we've trained all of our staff. Ask those questions. When they say, I need a green flooring material, what do you mean by green?
Right.
What's your idea of that? And so
Yeah.
we want to make sure they're getting exactly what they're in need of, but maybe they don't have the ability to formulate in their own words.
Yeah. That is definitely a big challenge in the industry of sustainability. I know I spent quite a few years in manufacturing, global manufacturing of chemicals, and looking at the regulations and the challenges of doing life cycle assessments and what does this mean and how do you navigate this really challenging sort of parallel situation of the regulatory environment and the all of those things you kind of were talking about there in terms of what we can say and what we should say and how we should. And then the second piece, which is what does sustainability mean? And
Yeah.
is it carbon footprint? Is it health? Is it, is it reduction of energy consumption? Like, what does it mean? And I think there's a lot of struggle still going on with that. And but it sounds like you've been pretty clear, like human health is, or health of people is really your primary focus area, but then you help with those other areas
Sure.
as needed. Is that a fair assessment?
It is. And so what you said before, all those reasons, energy efficiency, sustainability, so on and so forth, there are many ways you can describe what sustainable means. For the most part, the construction industry, the architectural design industry has taken the approach of global environmental concerns, energy efficiency. Those are the two big issues for the construction industry. Understandably so, because
Mhm.
of the high amount of embodied energy in the manufacturing of just the raw materials that are used in construction. And because of the fact that so much of the calculated emissions are coming from building materials,
Yeah.
I see why they're doing that. But the other issue is that's also quantifiable.
Yeah.
We know how much energy it takes to produce a ton of cement or to harvest and fabricate, 100 board feet of wood. We don't know exactly how to quantify what is quote unquote healthy for
Mhm.
humans, right? My approach always is to eliminate as much of the known chemical off-gassing offenders as possible. And ultimately, it's going to be a healthier space. Now, the other thing that I use is kind of one of our sayings here is what good is saving the environment if we're still poisoning the human occupants? And
Mm.
so while our industry has gone just, to the nth degree with sustainability and environmental concerns, it really has missed the boat completely on the human health aspect
Mm.
of this. And so that's where we come in. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, the people who have to live or work in these structures, they're not being inundated with chemicals that could harm them just because the design team was trying to strive for a LEED Platinum certification. Who cares about that if people in the buildings are getting sick?
Yeah. So how do you go about assessing the human impact of, or the human health impact of chemicals? Is it through kind of ongoing research and ongoing evaluation of SDS sheets and research, like, or do you have some type of research process that you're going through to evaluate the health impact of the various chemicals that get used in that industry?
Yeah, it's a tough process. I mean, you have to understand that there's about 92,000 chemicals used in the production of building materials and home goods right now. 92,000.
Yeah.
Out of 92,000, only about 3% have ever been tested for the toxicological effects on humans. We have
Yeah.
absolutely no idea what about 90,000 chemicals do to the human body. When a new chemical gets invented and gets sent to the EPA for their review, if it doesn't get approved or disapproved within about, I think, 90 to 120 days, it automatically gets rubber stamped as being approved.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
There's about a 8-year backlog in approving chemicals right now. Therefore, anything that gets manufactured and invented is automatically approved until there are enough class action lawsuits to take it out off the market, which is why there's only been a handful of chemicals ever in the United States to ever be taken off the market. So I look at that as the starting point. Like that we are inundated with this stuff.
Yeah.
Safety data sheets are somewhat helpful, but you have to remember that a safety data sheet by law only has to list hazardous ingredients that make up more than 1% of the volume or are not part of a proprietary blend. SDS sheets were originally developed for first responders, for
Yeah.
firefighters, for in an industrial situation. If there's a spill, how do you protect yourself inside of your home? The SDS sheet is not going to give you any indication of what happens with this paint after it's cured and does it still smell like solvent 6 months later. So I encourage people to look at them, but don't rely on them.
Right.
Most of the information you're going to find on an SDS sheet that is usable is not really that usable. It only tells you a partial story. So coming back to one of your original questions, how do we communicate and how do we use those lines of communication to help us move things forward? Because of the fact that I've been able to work with over 30,000 people in my career, I can tell you that I have been given some of the best anecdotal information from customers to tell me this is what works for me, and I have severe chemical sensitivity. I have got, mast cell activation. I can tell you this is what works, this is what doesn't work. And we take that in consideration when we are rating and reviewing products that we even sell. Everything we sell
Yeah.
on our website has been vetted by us and by our customers. It's not the end all be all of anything that's healthy, of course. It's just the ones that we have found a need to be able to supply to our customers. But there are so many instances where people will call up and say, I bought this zero VOC paint from the big box store, and how come everybody in my house 6 months later still sick? Well, that's because zero VOC has nothing to do with human health, has to do with outdoor air pollution, environmental regulations, not human health regulations. So it can still contain chemicals that are poisoning the occupants.
Yeah, yeah. No, after spending about 17 years in the chemical industry myself, I've observed a number of the challenges with being able to navigate these things, and especially at large scale, due to sometimes the regulations don't always help us to be healthier or more sustainable. Sometimes, and navigating the complexities of that is quite a challenge. So I appreciate everything you shared with us, and I think you've got a really interesting perspective on how to go about ensuring and driving in this direction of more healthy, more sustainable, more green. And so I really appreciate the time that you've spent with us, Andy, on this topic. There's so much more we could explore. I could envision this conversation going on for quite a period of time. And I'm fascinated to continue the conversation. But if people have specific questions, they're really interested in learning more about some of these things or about you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you and to learn more?
Sure. So first off, our website, thegreendesignCenter.com. From there, you're going to find the products that we talk about, my consulting. You'll also find links to our YouTube page. We've got a YouTube page, an Instagram page. That's all at Non-Toxic Environments, which is the name of my podcast. By the way, I do a weekly show myself, and I've been doing that for several years now, and helping to educate people. One by one, we'll educate people. But honestly, going to the website, the main site, thegreendesignCenter.com, you'll find all of my contact information and how to connect with me the best way for you.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure learning about the Green Design Center, learning about the things that you're doing to impact human health. I can see that this is a life work for you. This is like pushing and a purpose that's driving you, which is absolutely fascinating for me as an entrepreneur, that it's not about just the bottom line or how do I make money or there is a clear purpose driven mission that you've got here. And so I sincerely appreciate your time, Andy, being on this episode of Optics in Action. Thank you for sharing with us.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate being here.
Hey there, my name is Ryan Weiss, and I am the host of the Optics in Action podcast, where we spotlight visionary leaders who bring clarity and innovation to their industries. If you are interested in being a guest, or if you know someone who would be, you can find more information about the podcast and listen to previous episodes at opticsinaction.com. We'd be thrilled to have you on the show and can't wait to hear your story.